Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cadet First Class Annie Rudder. It is my privilege to welcome you to this session of the 28th Annual National Character and Leadership Symposium, made possible by the class of 1993, who is sponsoring this outstanding panel of Outstanding Airmen. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's panel, the 12 Outstanding Airmen of the Year. These 12 airmen were selected based on their superior leadership, job performance, and personal achievements. We are privileged to have all 12 of the winners with us here today. Senior Master Sergeant Verna Cannon Golombowski, Air Force Special Operations Command. Senior Master Sergeant Christopher Haney, United States Europe, Air Force Africa. Senior Master Sergeant Wilfred Morgan, Air Force Global Strike Command. Senior Master Sergeant Christopher Ricks, Pacific Air Force. Master Sergeant Douglas Brock, Air National Guard. Technical Sergeant Jeremiah Camper, Air Education and Training Command. Technical Sergeant Yvonne Fabulous Rosario, Air Mobility Command. Technical Sergeant Nicole Gansert, Air Force Reserve Command. Technical Sergeant Matthew O'Neill, Air Combat Command. Staff Sergeant Portia Short, Air Force District of Washington. Senior Airman Cassidy Basney, United States Space Force. And Senior Airman Roxanne Darien, Air Force Materiel Command. I am also honored to introduce today's moderator for the panel, Chief Master Sergeant Sarah Sparks, Command Chief, United States Air Force Academy.
I'll start today by introducing what our 12 Outstanding Airmen of the Year are. It is such an honor to present this group to you. These airmen represent our major commands, direct reporting units, operating agencies, and headquarters Air Force. They've each competed with more than 400,000 airmen at up to 5 different levels and represent several Air Force specialties. They truly embody the best of our enlisted total force. If you reference their bios, you will see just the caliber of airmen it takes to become an Air Force 12 Outstanding Airmen of the Year. They are our Air Force ambassadors, and I've had the privilege of spending some virtual time with this amazing group. They are truly remarkable. So without further ado, we'd like to get right into the discussion. As you know, our theme this year is Warrior Ethos. As airmen and citizens, Warrior Ethos is the foundation of what it means to be an airman. It was written for our men and women in uniform, but its utility, I hope, will not be limited to the sphere of literal armed conflict. We all fight wars in our work, within our families, and abroad in the wider world. So today we're going to talk all about Warrior Ethos and our own personal experiences. So to open up the discussion, I'd like to ask this group, how do you define Warrior Ethos?
Courage.
Tireless motivation.
Grit.
Resiliency.
Passion.
Passion. Awesome. Okay, so let's take a different spin. Now that we understand a little bit of where you look and how you define Warrior Ethos, how do you define the profession of arms?
Well, this is Chief Haney. An individual must learn the way of the military life and be a proactive contributor to their unit, their mission, and their service. The foundation for the arms is, in my opinion, is the oath of enlistment for the enlisted side. And that's something that we continuously develop until we retire, and even off into retirement. A lot of us live the military style. Members willingly accept unpopular or challenging ideas, situations, and they address those in the forms of actions. Although they may not internally agree with some things, they're going to act upon them, and it will be transparent to everyone else in the room. And that's a pretty awesome description, I think. That's how I live.
Awesome. Anyone else? I actually have the question for our one U.S. Space Force member, if you don't mind. How do you define profession of arms and Warrior Ethos for our U.S. Space Force airmen?
Well, Specialist Basney, for the Space Force, I think the Warrior Ethos that the Air Force uses are still very applicable. However, I think there's going to be a key part of that being resiliency. Just because it is a new force, you have to be flexible and be able to deal with the ever-changing environment. So just kind of keying in on those specific items.
Awesome, thank you. I know a lot of questions are coming from our American population about what the Space Force is and kind of how that is different from our Air Force and our other services. So thank you for being with us today. Specialist 4, BASNY. I'm learning the new ranks as we go. All right, so let's get into some stories. I think that's the best way to reach our cadets and our audience today is kind of sharing some of your experiences with us. So can you define or offer a time in your career when a situation demanded the utmost from you in terms of warrior ethos? Sergeant Morgan?
Yes, for me, I think back when I hear a lot of words that were already used, passion, grit, I think of tough-mindedness. I can recall being a 21-year-old staff sergeant, electrician in the civil engineer unit, stationed at McGuire Air Force Base. My mindset at the time wasn't very strong. At the time, honestly, at the time, I was really struggling to figure out who I was as a person. I would let people ask me how was I doing. At the time, I would look at the glass as half empty. I would say I'm just hanging in there. So for me, I had to figure out some of that grit so I can change my mindset. And it wasn't until I got with one of my mentors, civilian mentor, Marty Boone, and at the time, Tech Sergeant Alva Benjamin, who really reshaped my thinking and my mindset. So they got me into reading more. They also got me into figuring out what my why was. And that was the issue that I was having. Again, at the time, I was just living day to day and really didn't see past that day. But once they reshaped my mindset, I was able to start thinking differently, have more of a positive mindset. So when I think of warrior ethos, the thing that holds true to me is tough-mindedness.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. All right, let's kind of switch gears a little bit. We have a battlefield airman with us today. And so I'd like to kind of hone in on a couple of words that you guys mentioned as we talk through the definition. Being a battlefield airman, what does having physical courage mean? And do you have an example of when you've been challenged in this?
Yeah, absolutely. And good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So physical courage is, having the bravery to face physical pain, go face to face, go toe to toe with it, and then fighting through the hardships. And there's no doubt, no question that being a special warfare tactical air control party airman requires a lot of physical, attributes to the job. But in order to carry out the physical attributes or to be able to function at that level or ability, it starts with a mindset, and it starts with intestinal fortitude. So you have to accept and commit to being a better physically capable person. And how I can relate to this specifically, or a specific example of this, was preparing for my my attendance at U.S. Army Ranger School. I knew that it was going to be very physically demanding, and it was going to require a lot out of me. So I established a plan, a workout plan, a physical regimen, if you will, that I committed to day in and day out. I got up early. I was at the gym twice a day. I was focusing on the end goal, the end result, because I knew that was going to be required of me. So it was about pushing the envelope to see how far I can go. One, so I can learn what my abilities were and what I was capable of. But it also taught me where my left and right boundaries were so that I can stay on path to succeed. So physical courage is just the fight in your mind that can push yourself through any obstacle that you're presented with.
Yeah, when you find yourself at a breaking point with the physical aspect of this, what was it that pushed you through? One characteristic.
It's for the others, right? It's not for me. The characteristic there is being capable to provide for others in a stressful environment and still be able to carry on. Awesome.
Thank you for that. So we talked about physical courage, and I know part of the definition of warrior ethos is also moral courage. Sergeant O'Neill, do you have a story you can share with us about moral courage?
Sure. So Sergeant O'Neill from Air Combat Command. Hope everyone's having a great day. So moral courage at its essence, right, is the courage to take action for moral reasons despite the risk of adverse consequences. A lot of time, especially when we're in a rank structure, right, big current events going on right now is people getting brought up for investigations, usually being alienated in their units. Myself, I was able to experience this with people that I've worked with that have been under investigation, that were alienated by either their peers, their subordinates, or senior leaders, that while they were under investigation were really written off in some regards. It takes that individual to understand and still view that person of, even if you're in an investigative process, right? They are innocent until guilty, and to treat them as such, and really befriend those individuals. The individual was befriended by lots of peers, maybe about 3 or 4 individuals out of a unit of about 400 people. This individual lost their contacts, right? It could be quite devastating to someone to have something one day and lose everything the next. Those individuals that really stuck up and were putting themselves out there, myself included, that is a thought process. The view is that you associate yourself with that person when everything is going on, and you become this weird, awkward microcosm of a life culture. And what I would tell you is that, you having that moral fiber to stand up and to put your foot down and to support someone during their worst times, right, regardless of perception, that is real courage, because you're willing to sacrifice yourself, your perception, what people might see of you, and your well-being, really for the betterment of the team. And at the end of the day, it's about the team and not just one person. That's just a brief story of moral courage. I'll probably get more in depth with people, giving out more details later.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So when we talk about warrior ethos, a lot of times people really just associate that with combat or wearing the uniform. And I think a lot of times it has to do a lot more initially for many of us, just in regular life, right? Facing difficult challenges, failure. I don't think failure is a stranger to any of us in our lives. And sometimes that warrior spirit or mental toughness is what pulls us through these failures. So who in here would like to share a time where you experienced failure and share with us how you got through that?
Staff Sergeant Darian here, Air Force Material Command, stationed out here in Hill Air Force Base as a public health technician. So prior to entering the military, I left high school at 18 and went straight to college. Partied a lot, and then at the end of my first semester, I failed my major. Before this, I've never failed anything in my entire life. So it took me about a week or so to accept that failure, to go back to that drawing board and figure out how to make it right. How I did that, I had to double up on classes and prioritize, find peers to help me out and all of that. And fast forward to the Air Force, whenever I'm giving a task, especially academically, I revert to that failure by prioritizing my task, focusing, and just getting it done, which yielded me on the dean's list for my master's and honor graduate for basic training and both for tech school. So just finding that balance and knowing how to organize and prioritize your time, that helped me get through my failure situation back in college.
How do you apply the lessons that you learned there in your everyday now?
So lessons learned, I still party, still do all of that stuff, but it's all about just finding that balance, making a list and putting what's priority number 1, 2, or 3, just going down the line, and finding that time to make sure that all those tasks are done and you can still enjoy life.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing. I know we have a couple more failure stories to share. Does anybody else want to jump in?
I will. Tech Sergeant Gansert. I am at Biddle Air National Guard Base in Pennsylvania. So similar to Sergeant Darian, my first one that comes to mind is also in undergrad. At 18, right out of high school, I went to my #1 choice school on a full academic scholarship, which is ideal until I got pregnant my sophomore year. I actually gave birth to my first son the same week of finals, fall semester, as a sophomore. Obviously, this was not the plan by any means, to be 20 years old halfway through undergrad. I got calls from family like, "Oh, congratulations for throwing your life away." So, I saw it as a personal failure. Family saw it as a failure, and I really didn't know how to bounce back from that at the time. So I took the next semester off, and little by little, I was taking 1 or 2 classes because I was dead set on proving them wrong. And for a while, that was my only motivation because I personally doubted myself. I was terrified of being a statistic, but I couldn't let them be right. So fast forward to like 23 years old, I still didn't really know what I was doing. And I had a toddler. So I ended up enlisting. That didn't go very well at first either. The recruiter gave me 3 options as far as career fields. I didn't want to do any of them. So I ended up just picking the one with the shortest tech school so I could get back to my son as quickly as possible. But again, you just kind of stay motivated. Where you're at now is not where you're meant to be. You'll just keep pushing until you're satisfied. So I took that field. When I got to my first squadron, I was miserable and would take time out of the day to go take CLEP exams. I figured it got me out of the office and helped me get back on track for my degree. And the condensed version is I ended up transferring to another squadron that brought me into the world of ops. I retrained into a field that I loved with people that were amazing. Finished my degree, finished my master's, and am now getting ready to move into another field. So, you know, what seemed at first like the worst possible thing that could have happened to me ended up being a few years of really having to hustle and trying to get back on my feet. But I definitely wouldn't be talking to you all now had it not happened. So it all works out.
That's awesome. What an amazing story of perseverance and really just sticking it through until you're in a place where you're meant to be. And so that's an awesome story of success and grit, right? Which is kind of a great transition as we talk about grit and really what it takes and how we can get through some of these difficult times. So you both kind of spoke to grit in your stories. And the grit to me is the ability to persevere when you face obstacles. Sergeant Camper, I know you have a great story about grit and how you overcame. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, or afternoon, morning, wherever you're at, Sergeant Camper. So my story kind of starts from the very beginning of my Air Force career also. I was 23 years old before I joined the Air Force. I did my initial enlistment contract. In my previous job, I was a diesel mechanic. So it was either time to get out of the Air Force or pursue. I was starting to get like job offers so I could pursue other things. So I actually pursued to get out of the Air Force and pursue like job offers that I had back in my hometown. So my family and I, we went back to Virginia, where I'm originally from. We built a brand new house from the bottom up, and then it seemed like as soon as we finished building that house, the economy tanked in 2009, and I ended up not getting any of those jobs. I was struggling to pay my house. It was rough. So at that point, I decided to start trying to get back into the Air Force. It took quite a while, maybe almost 4 years to get back in. So those 4 years were probably some of the roughest 4 years of my entire life. And then I get back into the Air Force finally after waiting 4 years, struggling. I go to recruiting school. And when your prior service coming back in, one of the things you sign on your contract says that if you fail out of your tech school, then you get kicked out of the Air Force. So in tech school, we have 4 labs, like 4 huge tests that we have to do. And I think it was the 3rd test. I failed one of the tests. So again, that started this anxiety in me, like, you know, what am I going to do if I get kicked out of tech school again? So I was pulled back into the office after failing that, and I had 2 very high-ranking people speaking with me. And they looked at me dead in my eyes and said, Sergeant Camper, you will never be a good recruiter. Never, period. So I kind of took that as what we're talking about, grit and motivation. And I pressed through. And now here I'm standing here, 12 Outstanding Airmen with the rest of you guys. So use that as motivation.
That's right. Sometimes it's somebody telling us you can't that makes us do, right? I'm one of those kind of people who my stubbornness will help me overcome. So that's awesome. Yeah. And look at you now.
Yes, ma'am.
What I'll ask is just a quick question about, coming back into the Air Force the second time. How much more did you appreciate it, having the perspective?
Well, I can definitely say I'm not getting out again until it's all over.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So we've heard a lot of stories, and I know that I truly believe that as a leader, it's important to demonstrate the human condition and humanity. And remember that your airmen are human beings as well. And sometimes that's easy to forget. So Senior Master Sergeant CG, Canon Golombowski, you've personally been through really so much this year. And I would ask if you'd be willing to share your story with us and kind of how you've walked through this challenge and how you've overcome.
Yes, Chief. This story is very dear to my heart. December 8th, 2020 was an exciting day for the United States Air Force. Chief promotion results were released. I was on the list. 19 years of hard work, dedication, teamwork had led me to the honor of being selected to the top 1% of the enlisted corps. What my heart and my mind remembers most about that day is that my father, Vernon, passed away. I cannot explain the emotions that I felt in that moment. It was so overwhelming. I was in complete shock. To go from such a high moment to complete, utter sadness, the saddest I've ever been in my entire life. I felt helpless, alone. My husband was deployed as a nurse in support of COVID operations. My closest family was 5 hours away. I called my leadership. I let them know that I couldn't make it to the promotion party. They came out, they talked to me, they made sure I got home. First sergeant immediately started to get my husband home. 1 hour after my husband got home, my Aunt Valerie passed away, also from complications from COVID. There are no words to explain how much it hurts. That's two people that I love so much. We're not gone. My daddy, my Aunt Valerie, they were my friends. They were my confidants. And they were just gone. You can't prepare for things like this. When things like this happens, life just feels so uncertain. It deeply affected the airman that I am. And I realized that when I got back to work. As soon as I walked back into my job, I was no longer the airman that I was, because I was no longer the woman that I was. It's important as leaders to understand that your airmen are human, but it's really important to understand that you are human as well. Excuse me. It's okay to not be okay because you're human. It's important to be mentally, physically, spiritually, socially sound is so important for your resilience. When you're going through hard times like this, you need to remember that you are strong. You're resilient, and you will make it through whatever it is you're going through.
I know this is so hard for you to talk about, and I greatly appreciate you opening up and sharing this with us. I know you're still walking through this. I know it's not over, and I know it's going to be a while as you learn how to walk through this, but I know you know this family right here is right around you. You were with me when my dad died, so you know, I know not completely what you're going through, but totally understand the aspects that you speak to. And I think it's so important that what you say, I think, really resonates with, you know, everybody goes through difficult times. Everybody gets to a point when they're taken down to their knees at times. And it's important for us to remember the self-care that's required to get through that, and not feeling guilty for taking the time and taking the steps to take care of yourself. And secondly, you know, being there and being compassionate and being there to support and encourage your airmen and your teammates who might be going through struggle. It is not blind to any of us, these things. And so thank you for sharing your heart and opening up this vulnerability with us like this. I know this is very difficult to talk about right now, so I can't thank you enough for sharing. And it brings us to the, you know, the vulnerability piece. I think that's a huge part of what we're talking about today, you know, and that's something that's fundamental to building trust in teams and with each other, with our airmen. And it doesn't come easy to everybody. Vulnerability is something that's really difficult for a lot of people. And so I'd like to ask the team, you know, as we, you know, talk about these very, very important things, how do you choose when to be vulnerable and when not to be? And what factors exist when you choose to be? You know, trust, the environmental circumstances. Sergeant Short, I think you might have something to share with the group on this.
Yes, Chief. Hi, everybody. Staff Sergeant Short here. So I'll take everybody back to 2019 when I was doing everything that I was doing in order to become a 12AY. Pretty much you would say I was a shining star, right? Everything was going right in my career. But in reality, on the forefront of everything else, behind closed doors, I felt like everything was kind of spiraling out of control. And I felt like I was just putting up this front at work and just kind of diving into my work and not really focusing on me. I had a lot of things going on. I was divorced. I was a single mom. I was having financial issues. And it took for me to pretty much walk into my supervisor's office. I don't even think he knows how impactful this was for me, but I walk into his office and I just pretty much break down and I'm just like, Sergeant Zajac, I just basically, I need you. I had to like kind of step out on that limb and be vulnerable with him to show him the side that no one else saw. Everybody else saw Short. She's always squared away. She's always got everything done. You'll never have to worry about her being late, dropping the ball. But I was literally dropping the ball. Like the ball was on the ground already. And walking into his office and breaking down and just being able to cry to him pretty much changed me for the rest to this day. Like it allowed me to be vulnerable with someone outside of my family. Like that was a new thing for me. And it strengthened our relationship. I trusted him as someone who saw me for more than just the person in the uniform. And it allowed me to, in turn, be that vulnerable person for other individuals who came to me in the same situation that I came to him in. So it was a very emotional time. And I think emotions and vulnerability go hand in hand. But it helped tailor my way to 12 OAY and the great person and mentor that I am today.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. All right, and I think on the flip side, I think many of us have learned some hard lessons about when we should have been vulnerable but weren't, and kind of the impact that may have had in a situation. And that's definitely a difficult thing, right? Is there anyone here who has an experience or example where you chose not to be vulnerable and perhaps reflected on the negative consequences of that, unlike Sergeant Short's story?
Yes, ma'am, I actually do. Again, Seamaster Sergeant Morgan, Minot Air Force Base. Again, Staff Sergeant Morgan, 21 years old. I'm charged to lead and develop people. But honestly, I'm still learning who I am at this time. Black man growing up in Washington, D.C., being vulnerable wasn't something that I was used to, and my mindset at the time, being vulnerable, can allow people to take advantage of you, think you're weak. So as a staff sergeant, again, 21 years old, trying to figure out who I am as a person, a man in the Air Force, supervising airmen. I remember, unfortunately, this time he was going through some different challenges in life. And as he was going through those challenges, we're sitting down, having some discussion and feedback, and he broke down and began to speak about what he was going through. At the time, I could actually relate. It was a dating situation that he was going through, a heartbreak that he was going through, and I had experienced that. But trying to learn who I was as an NCO, I was like, all right, just stick to the standards. You're supposed to be here at this time. You're supposed to be here, and I didn't allow myself to be vulnerable with him. Unfortunately, me not being vulnerable with him, I lost him. There was no trust there. After that, he felt as though he came to me with a situation that was very near and dear to his heart, and I couldn't show any empathy. I couldn't be vulnerable to understand and relate to him. So I lost him. And in my mind, as a leader that I'm supposed to be, I lost the airman that lost trust in me, wouldn't confide in me. There was times when he had other situations. Instead of coming to me as his supervisor, he decided to go to someone else who he can trust, who showed that empathy and vulnerability with him. It wasn't until, again, as I changed my mindset, began reading more, got around better mentors, where I was able to understand that there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable, to the point of that it expanded me more. I got opportunity to go through the situation again with another one of my airmen, where I was able to connect with them more. And I was able to share that story of that heartbreak that I felt, and we were able to relate more. And now this young man looks at me as a mentor. Recently, just the other day, I was in a conversation with two members of my team, a raider and a raidee, and they're having real tough communication issues at the time. And when we came down to the discussion of what their communication was, the raidee was just like, man, as a supervisor, I don't know you. And you keep asking me to come to you with these issues. I don't know you. I don't trust you. You haven't opened up to me. I don't know who you are. You've never been vulnerable with me. And I was able to share that story. And I'm hopeful that as we spoke just the other day, their relationship is going to take another level, because they will be able to be vulnerable with one another.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. So I see how you flip that, and you're now using that lesson in all of the future opportunities that you have. All right, let's flip it just a little bit, and let's talk about Warrior Ethos in regards to things that kind of are linked to it, like character and honor. And I'd like to ask a question: how should cadets and new lieutenants think about Warrior Ethos in regards to character, ethical decision-making, and honor? And I think Sergeant Ricks, would you mind starting this one off?
Hey, Chief, not a problem. Senior Master Sergeant Chris Ricks, PACAF Headquarters, 8-4 Security Force Division. Hello, team. So yes, ma'am, definitely. I think when you think about, Warrior Ethos, one of the baselines for that is going to be your character. And I will say to our cadet body out there that, you didn't just pick that up when you got to the academy. This is something that folks have seen this in you. since you were a high school student, probably coming along playing on sports teams, of having good character, being trustworthy, somebody folks can count on. I think if you continue to apply that and think about how you want to apply that when you transition out to the operational Air Force, day to day, of having those good work habits, showing up on time, being dependable and things like that, whether it's an in garrison, peacetime operation, wartime, or dealing with a epidemic, your Warrior Ethos will be able to show up and push forward when you need it. But it always starts with your day-to-day character, making good decisions, folks knowing that you're dependable, they can rely on you, and then you're serving with honor. But this is something from when you graduate and you take your first salute to when you get ready to retire and render your last salute. Your character, making good decisions, living an honorable life. These things will transition with you throughout your life. What we hope is that you can also be an inspiration to generations that are coming behind you.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about you, Sergeant Brock?
Yeah, so to follow on to CMS Sergeant Hicks and his point is, we're all going to be, we all want to change the world, right? When we get to a new assignment, we all have this energy about us that's indescribable. And graduating from the academy, you're going to be super confident, super excited to get to your first unit. The thing that I would ask and that I would challenge to new cadets is to use the OODA loop. I'm sure you guys have all heard this 100,000 times, but it applies to going to new assignments and transitioning in your life, professionally and personally. Observe when you get to your assignment, observe the area, figure out what the routines are, figure out what your people are like, how they operate, orient yourself, get the lay of the land, figure out the building structure, filling out the best time to go to the coffee shop, all that stuff, like really get comfortable in your environment. Decide how you can implement yourself and how you can employ yourself at your squadron, and then act. Don't sit back, but start engaging, start involving yourself. So that would be my first recommendation. And then to follow that up is, to be curious and not judgmental. You never know who your airmen are and what they're capable of unless you go out and talk to them, ask them questions, and get a feel for their personalities, their behaviors. And the Air Force is filled with surprises. Airmen with master's degrees, doctorates, they've got certifications in the professional industry. So you'd be very surprised on the airmen that you work with day in and day out. And so I would just ask that you remain curious, ask questions, and not judgmental. Good luck to all of you, by the way.
Awesome, thank you. So you kind of bring me into a great transition as we talk about Warrior Ethos, and that involves teamwork, right? Everything we do is a team effort. There's no one that can accomplish things alone. And so I'd like to throw the question out there. How can you as leaders build cohesion on teams while respecting and valuing the differences of their teammates? How about Sergeant Robles? Oh, sorry, Rosario. My apologies.
It's very important to foster cohesion when it comes to teamwork. It's very important to make sure your team is very diverse. And when you come into the military, everybody comes in from different backgrounds, right? And you get that introvert and the extrovert together, and just the amazing things that can happen when you foster them actually working together. I mean, if you don't have a diverse team and everybody's just the same, you're not going to get the same end product at all. But sometimes when you have a diverse team, you get like the most fighting back and forth because they don't know how to work with each other. And that's where it's important as you as a leader to say, it's okay to be different, and to encourage them to actually work together. And when you're able to be a leader and get these amazing qualities out of these different people from different backgrounds, I tell you, the end product that they're going to end up producing is going to be so beneficial. And it's just going to help the mission altogether.
Awesome, thank you. I think Sergeant Ricks, did you have a story a little bit about team and a positive story about team regards to when you were in in charge of a group and how that worked out for you.
Hey, Chief, definitely. Thank you. Again, Senior Master Sergeant Rick PACAF 84 Security Forces. So definitely 2018, I'm at Joint Base Langley Eustis. Emails are going out. We got an air show coming up, which normally every couple of years, a lot of installations will do. And so my commander said, hey, Chris, I need you to go. You're going to attend this meeting. You're going to be our lead when it comes to force protection for this event. So I show up to the meeting. I look around the table. We got a bunch of field grade officers, and I'm the only senior CO sitting at the table. But the bottom line, once I saw that, I understood how much my commander trusted me as one of his enlisted leaders within the organization. And that's one thing I like to talk about, that relationship between officer and enlisted. We think about a team, is the roles that we kind of play, and me understanding that I need to be able to assess the risk for this event, understanding my commander will be actually accepting the risk. So of course you can imagine feeling a lot of anxiety, being nervous, during this time around the world. Active shooters were very big. We had people driving vehicles through crowds, injuring and killing people. So you can imagine a lot of anxiety, a lot of nervousness to make sure this event will go off without a hitch. But the bottom line is knowing how much my commander trusted me and empowered me to be able to get out there, get some ground truth for him so he can make some decisions. For one, it meant the world to me. But for two, I wasn't so much concerned about failure, but more so not wanting to disappoint my commander, knowing how much he had invested in me and trusted me. So when it comes to teamwork, there's also roles that we have to play. And I will tell you, you all get ready to transition and become officers. You really need to leverage on that relationship between your enlisted leaders as well. Understanding we're going to be able to get that ground truth for you and help advise you as far as being able to make decisions and what level of risk you're going to be accepting by those decisions. Thanks, Chief.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's great advice for our young leaders getting ready to go out there. All right. So this year, you kind of brought up some thoughts about really this year that we've been in has been faced with numerous different challenges, right? We've seen extraordinarily difficult challenges in regards to some of the racial tensions in our country, the civil governance issues in our country. And so I would ask, as NCOs and senior NCOs in our Air Force and Space Force, how should military professionals think about warrior ethos as both citizens and airmen and guardians amid these challenging times?
So Sergeant O'Neill, Air Combat Command, 1st Weather Group, again. So I like to talk about this because I think it's important, right? We all wear the uniform. On across from every single name tape, it says United States something, right? But it starts with U.S, right? That's us, right? It begins with us. Doesn't begin with me, doesn't begin with you, it begins with us. And if we all close our eyes and we actually reflect on ourselves, right? We represent the 1% of the nation that's able to wear this uniform, right? We represent the best of whatever our nation has when we're at war, when we're at home, right? Everything we do represents not just one perspective, but the unity of the entire country we hold on our shoulders. So when you close your eyes and you reflect, right? Regardless of your political view, where you stand on the spectrum, when you wear this uniform and you embody that profession of arms, right? And you raise your hand and you take that oath, you represent all values on all sides of the spectrum that this country has to offer. And that is the beauty of the United States, right? We raise our right hand and we swear, to protect the Constitution. Well, part of that we protect is that freedom that each and every single American has, right? But we have to be willing to put ourselves aside and our views aside to represent what everyone's view is as one nation, one people, regardless of perspective. We embody that burden on ourselves when we wear this uniform. And that is a burden that with the profession of arms, we must protect.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone have some other thoughts on that? All right, nothing heard. It's definitely a topic of conversation amongst our cadets, our airmen today, and the challenges that we face, as leaders in uniform, kind of how we address those things is extremely important. So I think that perspective is something for all of us to think about as we go forward. So I'd like to ask, as we talk about leadership, we're always talking to our cadets about how they're getting ready to go out there and lead our force. And some of them are getting ready to do that in a very short period of time. But we all need to understand when to put on the leadership hat versus the followership hat, right? We all play both roles, no matter what position you reside in. How do you balance being a follower and a leader?
Tech Sergeant Gansert here. I have something for that one. So as I mentioned earlier, I did retrain about 3 or 4 years into my career. So with that, I went from being the NCLIC in my office and running everything and being the person that had the answers. I took control of anything I could. And I was very proud to be that person to, oh, well, just take it to Gansert. She'll have it under control. I really thrived on that. And in retraining, I chose to go from being like the go-to person to the baby boom operator that don't let her touch anything without supervision. And it was definitely a difficult shift, but it reminded me and really for the first time kind of showed me how important it is to be able to follow as well as lead, especially, in the aircrew world. There are so many things that are life or death that you have to be willing to step back and acknowledge, no, I'm not going to be the smartest person in the room. I'm not going to always have the answer. I might not even know what publication the answer is in. And that's okay because I kept an open mind and I trusted that the people assigned to instruct me were good at their jobs. And I know that sometimes it's really hard to let go of that control aspect of it and be able to openly say, I don't know. But I mean, you really have to just learn to trust the people around you that they do know and not be afraid of asking questions to better yourself. Fortunately, the teams that I worked with always encouraged me to ask questions. It wasn't so much like, well, this is what the answer is, and then we move on to the next thing. They explained it so that I was able to understand and retain it and apply it. And then later, show it to others. But definitely in the beginning, it's very difficult. And I can see how for cadets, it may be difficult getting to their first assignment and going from being told, you're going to be an officer, you are going to have a managerial role, and then getting somewhere and being like, wait, this isn't in any of the books. Like, what is going on here? And I'd say for that, it's really important just to remember there is no shame in asking a question. I would rather tell you I don't have the answer for that right now and go with someone through the steps of figuring it out than to blindly give the wrong answer because I'm too proud to admit that I don't know. So there's definitely a balance. You'll win some, you'll lose some. But at the end of the day, you have all these people around you that have been here for so long and that they've definitely already been wherever you are. Let them guide you. There's no shame in that. And you get so much further, so much faster when you get out of your own way. Took me a while to realize that, but it's made all the difference.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. So I'm going to ask this one kind of open question, and I'd like a few of you to chime in on this as we start getting close to our hour together. What is our enlisted corps? All of you, what do you expect from our young officers graduating from USAFA?
Hey, Chief. Senior Master Ricks, I'll kick it off. So I would definitely say showing up to your first base is just being engaged. Make sure you got your skill craft notepad. You got your eyebrows up. Your nonverbals are showing everything that you care and you want to be a part of the team. And you're not just waiting for your 2 years to be up. We had a great conversation with our teammate C1C Rudder, who's been an all-star, helping put this first class event on the other day. And she mentioned about, you guys sometimes get told to, hey, just find you a senior CO and find you a good senior CO and you kind of get the guidance you need. But I'll tell you, if you show up and you're plugged into the unit, you're engaged and you show you care, we'll come find you. We'll find you. We'll take you in our wing. We'll share information with you and groom you up and get you ready to excel throughout your career. Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Ricks.
Picking up Oh, sorry, picking up where he left off. I would say that when you come into your unit, be ready to get down and get dirty with the young airmen. Get in there and really figure out what they're doing. That'll help you develop an assessment of how the unit's working, how your airmen are doing, and you'll build those relationships. And always keep in mind that, you know, your airmen and your NCOs, as you progress in rank, those are going to be your master seniors chiefs. So build those relationships early and as often as you can. It's all about networking when you get out here, and that will help you. And maybe someday, you know, you'll have some airmen that you met in the first unit, and they'll be your chief when you're a colonel. So that's good stuff. Always build those relationships.
Monty, I know you have more than that.
Yes, I've got something to add into that too. Just remember a very important piece of advice for me. I've been in 18 years now. The Air Force is a lot smaller than you think it is. And it's real easy to burn bridges, and it's real easy to ruin relationships, right? So constantly think, like, whoever I meet, am I going to see this person again? Am I going to work for this person again? Or is this person going to work for me again? So it's really important to navigate through these relationships as you progress through your career and realize that you will probably see somebody again. And it happens to me all the time. And I'm sure a lot of the OAY on this panel right now could attest and agree that, you know, this is not a large Air Force or Space Force. But so keep that in your mind as you plug through your careers. And then, you know, my last point to you is just, you know, enthusiastically support the decisions of your leadership. You know, lean forward, be innovative, develop new ways to attack leadership's goals and expectations, and challenge your airmen to the best of your ability. But just support your leadership enthusiastically as well.
Awesome. All right, Sergeant CG, would you bring us home?
Yes, ma'am. I think it's important for them to come and be open-minded. With that, you know, just remember everything that everyone else has said. We're here to support you. You are a leader. Be ready to make decisions. And it's okay if you make the wrong decision, because we can all work together to get to where we need to be. So it's very important. Remember to remain humble, but do exactly what you need to do, what the Academy has taught you to do. Go in there and lead.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I know I'm getting the sign that our hour is up. So this is just a small sampling. We've spent at least 3 virtual hours together, and this team has shared with me some amazing stories, many of which we didn't get a chance to talk about today. And so I know you'll have the opportunity for some live Q&A with them. We'll have an opportunity to do some small breakout rooms with them. And I would highly encourage you guys to get to know these 12 outstanding airmen. They represent the best our force has to offer. And what I would ask you, you know, they're joining us from all around the globe at all hours of the day and night. And so thank you so much for all of you for taking the time to prepare and plan for this and be here with our USAFA cadets and permanent party today. So just in just a few short months, our firsties, the class of 2021, will be joining our operational Air Force. Some of you will be leading airmen just like this. I ask, are you ready? Thank you for being with us.